Welcome back to your latest industry recap. A Qatar Airways Airbus A380 change has been made. JetBlue is announcing its own changes and a Airbus order is arriving. Want to begin there with AirAsia inching closer to a major deal with Airbus as part of efforts to focus in on the development of its single-aisle fleet. The contract, which had been reported as potentially being announced at the 2025 Paris Air Show, did not eventuate, but it is still on track to be confirmed. Speaking with Reuters, Tony Fernandez, the CEO of Capital A and therefore the owner of AirAsia, stated that a new order is still forthcoming. AirAsia firmly believes that the position it's in at the moment is more important than getting this deal finalised. There needs to be a clear pathway for itself out of restructuring before it is announcing these deals. The ongoing restructuring was imposed on the company as part of a view that it had some financial distress. AirAsia has been working diligently to improve and overcome this, and it is nearing its formal completion. Not all aircraft orders touted as confirmed during a major international air show ultimately get over the line, whether this is for Airbus or Boeing planes. On several occasions, however, the congregation of industry professionals allows pivotal progress to be made on such deals, bringing them ever so closer to being announced. Airbus stands to be really the significant winner from the new contract that AirAsia is set to sign, with a focus naturally on the development and renewal of the single-aisle operation. The AirAsia group has over 200 aircraft in its fleet spread across several airlines, and the fleet relies solely on the Airbus portfolio of commercial aircraft. One of the biggest pillars of the deal is an order for regional aircraft. This would be a bit of a changing of the guard in the business, with the deal likely to be in 3 digits, as AirAsia moves away from a strict reliance on types such as the A320neo family, and more towards a plane such as the A220. This is being touted as the more than likely option that will be selected, although the A220 is still competing with the Embraer E2. Onlookers just feel that the A220 is the better solution, given you're looking at greater fleet commonality and obviously them staying with the company that they know so well. AirAsia remains confident that a deal will be finalised in the next couple of months and would not only include the possible A220, but would further enhance its reliance on that A320neo family I mentioned. The second part of the contract would be for the A321neo, with orders likely to exceed 50 units. The exact figures are subject to change given that finalisation is still required. AirAsia already has hundreds of planes on order from Airbus, and this includes hundreds of the A321neos specifically and its relevant derivatives. So now there is an appetite to increase this even further. Over to Qatar Airways, and they have made official changes to their Airbus A380 operation. The company axed the A380 service to an Australian city of Perth. This was publicly confirmed by the airline in February, but has now taken into effect across the network as of June the 24th. It was the only other Australian city to be served by the Super Jumbo other than Sydney, and yes, to answer any questions you may have, Sydney for the moment is still retaining the world's largest passenger plane. Launching operations to Perth in 2012, Qatar Airways has certainly maintained a presence on this route in some capacity and decided to bring the Super Jumbo in May of 2018. The A380 continued to serve Perth until the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic, but as we know, Qatar Airways were one of the few airlines that continued to fly their aircraft during some of the harshest restrictions, operating many government-approved flights to get citizens back to their home countries. I was on one of those flights, not with the A380, but still with Qatar Airways, who were my only option back home to Australia. Essentially, the carrier confirmed it would replace the 380 with an aircraft of a lesser capacity, but by the end of 2022, the aircraft returned to Perth, as demand began to surge once more in Australia, aligning with the easing of restrictions that had been implemented. Despite Qatar Airways axing its A380 service from the Perth market now, this is part of a broader effort to expand, actually, believe it or not, its presence across the country, as very much evident through its investment in Virgin Australia. Virgin Australia is launching its flights to Doha from Australian capital cities, albeit with Qatar Airways crew and aircraft, but it is a move that follows the Doha-based carrier's previous restriction from outright expanding into the country, with the investment serving as a bit of a workaround to regulations and getting it what it wants. Therefore, while the A380 departs from Perth, the airline's focus on Australia is by no means dropping, with more flights set to launch thanks to the stake being acquired in Virgin Australia. This will include double daily flights to Perth with Boeing 777s as part of that expansion. expansion. Obviously, it remains an interesting move nonetheless in terms of looking at it from the sole point of the A380, because Qatar Airways' relationship with this aircraft has rather been love-hate since it first took on the plane. Since the global pandemic, the chief executives of the past and even now have reaffirmed their operation of this type is only really a necessity to serve the network rather than a choice. And you'd argue that if they had their available aircraft that were expected to be delivered, they wouldn't feel the need for an Airbus A380. But there is certainly a purpose, whether it is into cities such as Sydney or Perth or towards other major international locations. The high-capacity nature does allow them to transport quite significant personnel on a daily basis. Over to the final story, and that's this with JetBlue, who have confirmed further changes to their operations across the United States as part of turnaround initiatives. The latest decision announced over the last couple of weekends will see JetBlue depart from Miami International Airport, citing poor financial performance. The US carrier will then repurpose the aircraft that serve this airport to fly across markets that are deemed more profitable. The airline's director of corporate communications confirmed in a written statement that the decision to end a small number of unprofitable flights, such as Boston to Miami, will free up aircraft for new routes or existing ones that require more capacity. With the adjustments effective on September 3, 2025, JetBlue will not completely leave Florida. Instead, it will focus really on Fort Lauderdale as its primary airport here. This remains an option as well, the carrier says, for affected customers that were booked on flights which are now obviously being cancelled. JetBlue is in a position, like many other airlines, where finding the balance of profitability across the network is an ever-evolving challenge, and it means the network remains under a very fine microscope. Primarily driven by the airline's desire to become more financially stable after accumulating losses, such decisions are necessary to ensure the business can stick around for longer rather than shorter. JetBlue is also not just stopping with decisions to axe flying to Miami International Airport. It'll also see specific routes suspended across the winter 2025 season, those routes initiating from Seattle on transcontinental services, with John F. Kennedy and Boston Logan flights to simply become seasonal as part of those ongoing network adjustments. Why is all of this happening? Well, it is all tying in with Jet Forward, which was an initiative announced some years ago, with the key focus to stabilize the business and secure a financial future that is sound. They're progressing with this rollout on a continued basis, looking to improve things such as on-time performance to drive operational reliability up. They also have closed certain stations, shut down certain routes, and really optimized 20% of their network already, and they feel there's much more to that, which is why these continued announcements, while maybe upsetting to a certain extent for those that are based in the US and may rely on routes such as these, are important for the future of JetBlue. Thanks for watching, take care, be safe, leave any thoughts down below in the comments, and I will see you same place, same time tomorrow for your next industry recap.
And we'll fly.